In 1968, the very first year when amateurs and professionals in tennis could compete against each other in major events, the United States Open was won by Arthur Ashe. Arthur Ashe was a man who enjoyed a storied career on the tennis court and a dignified life as an ambassador of equality and goodwill. A life that tragically ended in 1993 after he contracted HIV from a blood transfusion following heart bypass surgery. Younger generations of tennis fans may only recognize the name Arthur Ashe as the one that adorns the stadium at the Billie Jean King National Tennis Center at Flushing Meadows in New York, the site of the United States Open, or that, starting in 1993, the USTA has kicked off the tournament with Arthur Ashe Kids Day, a remembrance and celebration of the sport's most elegant and thoughtful ambassador. Arthur Ashe rose from segregation and racial roadblocks to become the first African American male to win the United States Open in 1968, Australian Open in 1970, and Wimbledon in 1975. In 1963, Arthur Ashe was the first African American chosen to play Davis Cup for the United States of America, and in 10 years representing his country, he helped the United States of America to win 5 Davis Cup championships in 1963, 1968, 1969, 1970, and 1978. Arthur Ashe was much more than a storied tennis player. He was also an activist, an author, an educator, and a tireless campaigner for civil rights and racial equality, not only in the United States but worldwide, particularly against the apartheid systems followed in South Africa. Arthur was a voice for all the minorities, and that goes for women too. He brought a level of conscience to the game, whether he was speaking on South Africa or inner city minorities or exclusionary policies any place. Arthur's influence on tennis did not fade after he left the sport, said Pam Shriver in Arthur Ashe's obituary in the New York Times. Further evidence of Arthur Ashe's convictions came in 1972 when he helped found the Association of Tennis Professionals, known more popularly as ATP, the organization that unionized the professional tour and protected the interests of its players. On August 29th in 1968, Arthur Ashe, then only 25, became an unlikely US Open champion amongst a field that included 4 Australians who were all seeded ahead of him: Rod Laver, Tony Roche, Ken Rosewall, and John Newcombe. Having won the United States Amateur Championships over Bob Ludds at the Longwood Cricket Club in Boston earlier that summer, Arthur Ashe had earned the number 5 seed. He was under no pressure to win the championship, however, because that pressure was reserved for the Australians. At the time, he was in the midst of a 3-year army stint and expectations were low. In the finals, Arthur Ashe defeated another unforeseen counterpart in Dutchman Tom Ocker. Tom Ocker was seeded number 8. He was also on a magical run. Arthur Ashe had won his previous 3 matches in straight sets and had secured a bit of luck when his quarter-final opponent Cliff Drysdale upset Rod Laver in the 4th round. The final played out in 5 marathon sets. The first 5-setter Arthur Ashe faced at the Open. He won the title 14-12, 5-7, 6-3, 3-6, 6-3. The cornerstone of Arthur Ashe's game, serving and volleying, was magnificent that afternoon. He pounded 26 aces against Ocker, and his whipping backhand was flawless, angled perfectly on cross-court shots and crisply executed at the net. Arthur could beat any player on a given day, or he could lose to a bad player if he was miss-hitting. All the elements fell in place, there were a lot of upsets, and he just took advantage of the opportunity, recalled his Davis Cup captain Donald Dell. Arthur Ashe had become the first American to win at Forest Hills since Tony Trabert in 1955, but the victory was somewhat bittersweet. At the time, Arthur Ashe was still an amateur and receiving a per diem as a member of the Davis Cup team, meaning he could not accept the $14,000 prize which went to Ocker. If there was any solace for Arthur Ashe after missing out on his first professional tennis paycheck, on December 12, 1968, he became the number one ranked US player by the United States Lawn Tennis Association. He had a stellar 1968 season, helping to lead the US Davis Cup team to the Davis Cup Championship with a decisive 4-1 victory over Australia, which ended a 5-year drought. Born in Richmond, Virginia, Arthur Ashe began playing tennis at the age of 7 on courts at Brookfield Park, a segregated playground adjacent to his home. 7 years later, he found a mentor in Hall of Famer Dr. Robert Johnson, who for 2 decades had assisted black tennis prodigies including Althea Gibson. Even as a youth, Arthur Ashe was a cerebral player, and Johnson's guidance was instrumental on how his pupil comported himself on the court. His on-court etiquette was among the finest in tennis history. His high school interscholastic career started at Maggie L. Walter High School but was completed at Summer High School in St. Louis, where he could face stronger tennis competition. As the fifth-ranked junior in the country, Arthur Ashe won the National Junior Indoor Championship in 1962 and was awarded a full scholarship to the University of California at Los Angeles. As a student at UCLA, Arthur Ashe attracted the attention of tennis legends Pancho Gonzalez and Pancho Segura, who helped refine his game and encourage experimentation. He won both the NCAA Division I singles and doubles championships in 1965, defeating Mike Belkin of the University of Miami 6-4, 6-1, 6-1 in singles and teaming with Ian Crookenden to capture the doubles title. Starting in 1959, when he made his major tournament debut at the US Nationals, Arthur Ashe played 20 years, retiring in 1979. He was a fixture at the US Nationals, which later became US Open, playing 18 times and earning a 53 wins to 17 defeats record. He was the semi-finalist in 1965 when he lost to champion Manuel Santana 2-6, 6-4, 6-2, 6-4, and a finalist in 1972, losing to Ilie Nastase in a sensational match that saw Nastase erase a 2-1 deficit to win 3-6, 6-3, 6-7, 6-4, 6-3. Arthur Ashe only competed at the Australian Nationals, which later became Australian Open, 6 times, but became the first African American to win the title in 1970, defeating 5 Australians, including Dick Creeley in the final 6-4, 9-7, 6-2. He earned his semi-final win when fellow American Dennis Ralston retired 2-1 down in the fourth. Ashe also was a finalist in 1966, 1967 and 1971, losing to Roy Emerson in the first 2 years and Ken Rosewall in 1971 as the defending champion. The red clay at Roland Garros was not especially suited for Arthur Ashe's game. He was a quarter-finalist there twice in 1970 and 1971. But the fast grass at Wimbledon was a surface that appealed to Arthur Ashe's attacking serve and volley style. Arthur Ashe had been a semi-finalist at Wimbledon in 1968 and 1969, and when he defeated number 1 seed and heavy favourite Jimmy Connors in 1975, it was a throwback to his US Open Championship run 7 years earlier in 1968. The Wimbledon field was stacked with Connors, Rosewall, Bjorn Borg, Guillermo Villa, and Nastase, all seeded higher than Arthur Ashe. Arthur Ashe was then nearing his 32nd birthday. He had never defeated Connors in 3 previous meetings and was seeking his first Wimbledon title. The odds were stacked against him. But his draw became more favourable as the fortnight progressed. Nastase was out in the second round, Rosewall was a fourth round casualty, and Villa was ousted in the quarterfinals. He upset Borg in the quarterfinals and needed to prevail in 5 long sets against Tony Roche in the semifinals. The final against Jimmy Connors saw Arthur Ashe play perhaps his finest strategic and athletic match in a huge upset, 6-1, 6-1, 5-7, 6-4. His lateral movement on the baseline that afternoon was swift yet controlled. Jimmy Connors had few openings to slip balls past his opponent. Arthur Ashe sliced his backhand low and deep, mixed up his pace, placed lobs effectively. Instead of booming big first serves, he sliced his serve wide to both Connors' backhand and Connors' forehand and charged the net. His volleys were on point and the victory ranks as one of Wimbledon's biggest upsets. Arthur Ashe said afterwards, "I always thought I could win. I was pretty confident. I had been playing well." The years that Arthur Ashe won his upset-laden major singles titles were his finest. In 1968, he won 10 of 22 tournaments he entered and compiled a 72 wins to 10 defeats match record. In 1975, he was even better, winning 8 of 26 tournaments with a 97 wins to 18 defeats record. Arthur Ashe defeated Bjorn Borg at the Dallas WCT Finals 3-6, 6-4, 6-4, 6-love. Arthur Ashe also won a pair of major doubles titles, the first at the French in 1971 alongside Marty Riessen in a lengthy 6-8, 4-6, 6-3, 6-4, 11-9 victory over fellow Americans Tom Gorman and Stan Smith, and a second in straight sets at the 1977 Australian with partner Tony Roche. Arthur Ashe spent 10 years ranked in the world's top 10, rising to number 2 in 1976. In 1979, at the age of 36, Arthur Ashe suffered his first heart attack that required bypass surgery and led to his retirement from tennis. He suffered a second heart attack and subsequent bypass surgery in 1983, which he widely believed led to him contracting HIV in 1988. The prideful Ashe did not disclose he had the disease until April 1992, wanting to make the announcement on his terms, but news leaks forced his announcement. At the end of 1992, Sports Illustrated named him its Sportsman of the Year, and a year later he created the Arthur Ashe Foundation for the Defeat of AIDS. Arthur Ashe's health issues ended his storied tennis career but jump-started his philanthropic, humanitarian, civic and activist endeavors, which occupied his life for a decade. In 1988, he helped develop inner-city tennis programs and co-founded the National Junior Tennis League in New York City, Newark, Detroit, Atlanta, Kansas City and Indianapolis. That same year, he published his 3-volume, 1,600-page treatise, A Hard Road to Glory, a history of the African American athlete. He earned an Emmy for co-writing the television adaptation of the book. The soft-spoken but highly principled Arthur Ashe has been showered with honors, tributes and accolades in life and in death. Among the most prominent came in 1993 when he was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Bill Clinton. ESPN's SP Awards presents the Arthur Ashe Courage Award to a person in the sports world that exhibits courage in the face of adversity. His alma mater UCLA opened the Arthur Ashe Student Health and Wellness Center in 1997. In 2007, USA Today listed Arthur Ashe as one of the most inspiring people of the last 25 years. On his website, Arthur Ashe is quoted as saying, "Regardless of how you feel inside, always try to look like a winner. Even if you are behind, a sustained look of control and confidence can give you a mental edge that results in victory." Thank you for watching.